The beep of John's heart monitor is the only sound in this cold room. While my daughter-in-law Alicia only cares about the bank password, I froze. Can a heart really be that cruel? Hello, my dear friends. I am Sofia. There are some days when the Texas sky is clear and blue, but the storms in a person's soul are more fierce than Winter Storm Uri. I am standing here in the hospital hallway to tell you about the truth. I had to face a truth so painful that it left a woman who has seen it all like me completely numb. Before I begin, I just want to check in on you. How is the weather where you are? Do you have your warm cup of tea ready? If you can please give me a like, because your presence is a huge comfort to me right now. Now let me take you back to that fateful day. I step into the hospital room, and the sharp sting of antiseptic immediately hits the back of my throat. John lies there so pale and thin, nearly lost under a heavy web of wires and tubes. I had planned on calling Alicia again, thinking maybe she was just stuck in that thick Houston traffic, or had some kind of emergency on her way to the hospital. But the room is completely empty, and the only thing filling the space is the steady rhythmic thumping of the ventilator. My chest starts to tighten like someone is squeezing the life out of me, and a sharp pain radiates from my heart all the way down to my fingertips. I had just spent the morning preparing a fresh pot of chicken soup, the kind John has loved since he was a little boy. But now it just sits there like a useless ghost on the small wooden table. This silence in the room isn't peaceful at all. It is a cold and ugly truth that is slowly starting to show its face. When I reach over and happen to see John's phone light up with notifications from his banking app, my whole world just stops turning. There isn't a single message asking how his surgery went, or if he is even still breathing. Instead, I see thousands of dollars being drained at luxury resorts in the Maldives. Alicia isn't missing or hurt. She is thousands of miles away, enjoying a vacation using the very money John worked his fingers to the bone to earn, while he is right here fighting for his life. I feel my face go hot with a flash of anger before a freezing numbness washes over me. All those sweet promises she made on their wedding day about staying together until death, do they part, feel like nothing but cheap lies now. I sink down into the hard plastic chair, my hands shaking so much I can barely hold on to the phone. This betrayal isn't just about one secret trip. As I start to look deeper into those numbers, I realize I have been far too naive believing in Alicia's gentle and kind act. All the sacrifices I have made as a mother for this family feel like they have been turned into nothing more than gambling chips for her to play with. I sit alone in my quiet house as the late afternoon sun stretches across the floor and lands right on my empty jewelry box. My mother-in-law's heirloom necklace is gone, and I know deep in my soul it did not just walk away. Alicia told me I was just getting old and losing my mind, making me doubt my own memory. But I remember seeing it last month when she was supposedly helping me clean my room. It hurts more than the theft itself to think she would use my age against me to make me feel small and confused. Then there is that $50,000 I pulled from my hard-earned retirement savings to help them with the down payment on their house. I worked for decades to have that security, and I thought I was investing in my son's future and a stable home for my grandbabies. But now I see I was just pouring my life savings into the bottomless pit of her secret gambling habit and all those lies she told about needing help with the kids. I look back at it all now, and the pieces finally fit together into a picture I wish I had seen much sooner. Every time Alicia was extra sweet or brought me my favorite soul food, it was really just a performance before asking for my credit card to buy things she said the children needed. She even offered to help me pay my bills, just so she could have my bank statement sent to her own address, where I could never see the truth of what she was doing. The pattern is so clear now that she was only ever kind when she wanted something from me. She used my trust and my love for my family to slowly pick away at the American dream that I and my late husband worked our whole lives to build. The deep sadness and the cold feeling I had at the hospital is starting to turn into a quiet and steady flame of anger. I look at my husband's picture on the wall, and I whisper the words out loud that enough is enough. I am not going to let our family legacy and the things we bled for be destroyed by a person like her. The next morning, I wake up feeling like a completely different woman. I am not that weak or confused or passive person she tried to make me believe I was through her manipulation. I know I have to take a stand for myself and my family name. My first step isn't going to be a loud confrontation or a messy fight, but a quiet journey to find the strength and the freedom I had almost forgotten I possessed. I slide my feet into a brand new pair of Skechers with that soft cushioned sole I had been looking at for months, but kept telling myself was too expensive because I felt I needed to save every penny for the kids and grandkids. Walking through the park near my house, I take a deep breath and let the scent of freshly cut grass and the warmth of the early morning sun wash over me. I make my way to Target and pick out a few new books and one of those Amazon Kindle devices, because the screen is so much easier on my eyes when I want to zoom in on the words. It feels like forever since I have allowed myself to just enjoy a quiet morning like this without worrying about the next pile of bills or whatever Alicia might be complaining about. I just focus on my own breathing and the simple rhythm of my steps. Later that afternoon, I pick up the phone and call my old friend Martha, who I used to sing with in the church choir back when I had more time for myself, before I became so consumed with John's life and his family. Hearing her laugh on the other end of the line makes my heart feel lighter than it has in years. We make plans to meet for lunch at our favorite little spot, where we can enjoy some warm cornbread and talk about our faith and the things that truly matter in this life. I can feel that sense of connection coming back to me, and I realize that there is a quiet but powerful support system waiting for me among people who share my values. I am not alone in this world anymore, and that thought gives me the strength I need to face whatever is coming next. But that peace is interrupted sooner than I expected when my phone starts vibrating in my hand. I look down and see Alicia's name on the screen, and I can tell right away that the sweet and innocent act she usually puts on is gone. My dear friends, have you ever been so busy worrying about your children that you completely forgot how to take care of yourself? Sometimes a good pair of shoes or a long lunch with a best friend is the best medicine for the soul. What do you do to find your peace when life gets heavy? Please leave a comment with the word peace and share your thoughts with me. The phone rings right in the middle of a quiet Texas afternoon, and my heart gives a little skip because I already know who it is. I pick it up, and Alicia's voice comes through sweet as maple syrup, the kind of polite tone I used to brag about to my sisters back at the church. She starts telling me how worried she is about John and how she is going to catch the very next flight home. But through the receiver, I can hear the distinct rhythmic shush of ocean waves in the background. I sit down at my kitchen table, and my fingers tightly grip the edge of my hand-embroidered tablecloth, the one my mother made for me years ago. I don't feel that warm, fuzzy feeling a mother should feel when her daughter-in-law calls. Instead, I feel a cold shiver of hypocrisy crawling up my spine. She starts rambling about the hospital bills and how the business office is saying there is some kind of bank error preventing the payments from going through. I stay real quiet, just listening to her weave this elaborate story leading me right where she wants me to go, which is straight to my pocketbook. She finally gets to the point and mentions that investment fund I let her help me manage, saying we need to withdraw a large chunk of it right now to ensure the grandchildren's future is secure. My heart just aches hearing her use those sweet babies as a shield for her own greed. Alicia, I say, and I stop her right in her tracks with a voice that is deeper and colder than I even knew I had in me. I tell her very clearly that I have already been to the bank, and I have frozen every single one of our accounts. The line goes so quiet, I can actually hear my own heart thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. That cocky confidence she had just a second ago seems to crack right then and there. I feel this strange new surge of power moving through my veins, like I am finally standing up on my own 2 feet after being pushed down for way too long. Alicia doesn't stay quiet for long, though she flips a switch and starts sobbing into the phone, telling me I am misunderstanding everything and that she is under so much pressure from all these secret debts John supposedly left behind. She is trying so hard to make me feel guilty, telling me that if I don't release that money, my grandson Jake is going to get kicked out of his school. But I have already seen those statements from the Caymans, and I know the ugly truth about where that money is really going, and it isn't for any school tuition. I tell her real soft but firm not to use Jake's name to lie to me ever again. I can hear her starting to panic now, her breathing getting real shallow and jagged on the other end of the line. She starts begging me, then promising she will explain every little thing as soon as she gets back to the house. But I am not that same Sofia who would have believed anything she said just a week ago. I tell her we aren't going to have any more private chats, and the next time we talk, it is going to be with a lawyer sitting right there between us. And then I just hang up the phone. I look out the window and see the leaves starting to turn as the late 2025 chill starts to settle into the air. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like a victim waiting for the next blow to fall. I have finally drawn a line in the sand to protect what is left of my family legacy. The silence that follows that call is heavy and a little bit scary because I know a person driven by greed like Alicia won't just walk away quietly. When you cut off the money, a person like that gets desperate, and a desperate person is a dangerous one. My instinct was right because only a few hours later, I hear the unmistakable sound of a key rattling in my front door, and my blood just turns to ice. The front door bursts open with such violence that it slams against the hallway wall, and there Alicia stands, looking like a woman I have never met before. Her clothes are all wrinkled and the expensive silk is stained. But it is her face that stops my heart, because the mask of the sweet daughter-in-law has finally slipped away to reveal a look of pure and jagged rage. She does not even pretend to care that her husband is in a coma or ask how I am holding up. She just marches straight into my living room and hurls her designer bag onto the sofa with a force that makes the cushions hiss. "What in the world do you think you are playing at?" She screams at me, her voice echoing off the high ceilings, and she demands to know how I had the nerve to freeze her credit cards. I slowly push myself up from my lazy boy chair, the one John bought for me to rest my aching back, and I have to grip the armrests just to keep my knees from buckling under the weight of her anger. The air in my home feels thick and toxic, now smelling of her heavy perfume mixed with the stale scent of cigarettes, and a desperation that makes my stomach turn. I look her right in those bloodshot eyes, and for the first time in my life, I do not look away. I tell her straight to her face that I have seen the records of her fancy resort stays in the Maldives and those secret transfers to Cayman digital wallets that she thought were hidden on John's phone. My voice is shaking, and my chest feels like it is being crushed by a mountain of betrayal that has been building up for years. She freezes for a split second like a thief caught in a flashlight beam. But then she throws her head back and lets out a laugh so cold and full of contempt that it makes my skin crawl. "You don't know the first thing about money or how the real world works." She sneers at me standing there in the house I paid for, and she calls me a senile old woman who spends too much time praying at church to understand anything. It is a knife to my soul to be insulted like that, in the very place where I raised my family. But I stand my ground like an old oak tree in a storm. She starts frantically ripping through my desk drawers, throwing papers and pens everywhere, and I realize with a jolt of horror that she is hunting for my mother-in-law's heirloom gold necklace. "Where did you hide it?" she screams, her eyes wild and red like a cornered animal. She keeps shouting that the necklace is hers by right, and that it belongs to her as part of her inheritance, as if I were already in the ground. My heart just shatters into pieces because, in all this screaming and demands for gold, she has not mentioned John's name even once, while he is fighting for every single breath in that cold hospital room. All she sees when she looks at this family is a collection of things she can sell to feed her gambling addiction and pay off the people she owes. I step in front of the cabinet, and I tell her with a voice that is as sharp as a razor that a sacred piece of our family history, like that necklace, will never belong to a person with a heart as dark as hers. Alicia lunges forward and tries to shove me out of her way, and that physical touch breaks the last bit of safety I ever felt in my own home. "You need to stay out of grown folks' business," she tells me, trying to make me feel small and ignorant by saying the numbers are too big for my old brain to grasp. But I look her in the eye and tell her I understand plenty, especially after I found the stack of debt collection notices she had hidden under their bed. I tell her I see exactly how she is trying to gamble away the future of my grandson Jake and the life John worked so hard to build for them. The tears are burning behind my eyes, but I refuse to let a single one fall because I will not give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Then she goes for the one place she knows will hurt me the most, and she threatens to take my grandchildren away to a place where I will never find them unless I call the bank and give her what she wants. That is a direct hit to my heart, because those babies are the light of my life and the reason I keep going. The sheer cruelty of using my own flesh and blood to blackmail me makes me feel a level of disgust that I didn't think was possible for another human being. The woman I once welcomed into this family and loved like my own daughter is dead and gone, and only a cold-hearted predator is standing in my living room. My anger finally boils over like a pot of water on the stove, and I point my finger right at the front door and I tell her to get out of my house, this very second. She laughs one more time, and it is a sound that will haunt my dreams as she grabs her bag and tells me I am going to regret this day. She screams that this house and every penny in the bank will be hers eventually, because I won't be around forever to stop her. She slams the door with such a terrifying force that the family photos on the wall actually rattle and the glass on one of them cracks. I stand there in the sudden silence of my living room, and my breath is coming in short, ragged gasps, like I have just run a marathon. I am completely exhausted, and my spirit feels like it has been dragged through the dirt, but deep inside me, a new kind of steel is starting to form. I know this is only the start of a long and bitter road, but I am ready to fight for what my family worked for. I look around the rooms that used to be filled with the smell of Sunday dinner and the sounds of laughter, but now it feels like a hollowed-out battlefield. I know I have to move fast because a person as desperate as Alicia is only going to get more dangerous now that her money has dried up. I pick up my phone with shaking hands and I look for the contact John told me to keep for an emergency, the number for a lawyer he trusted named Sandra Chen. That night, the darkness in the house feels different, and I cannot bring myself to close my eyes for even a minute. I sit in my chair and watch the glowing screen of my tablet, seeing the grainy images from the security cameras I just had the neighbor help me install around the porch and the back door. I am a woman standing alone against a storm right now, but the fear that used to keep me quiet has been replaced by a cold and steady resolve. Tomorrow morning, I am going to start building a fortress around this family legacy to make sure that Alicia never gets her hands on a single piece of it ever again. Early the next morning, I started the serious work of securing my home and my future. I called a locksmith to come out and change every single lock on my doors, and the sound of that power drill echoing through the hallway felt like a bold statement of my own power. I stood there watching him work, and when he finally handed me those heavy new keys, I felt the weight of that cold metal in my palm like a solid promise of safety. Alicia will not be able to just walk into my house whenever she feels like it anymore. I also had him install Ring security cameras at every entrance because being able to see my own porch on my phone gives me a sense of control I have not felt in a long time. Just knowing I can monitor my own space makes the heavy anxiety I have been carrying feel a little bit lighter. My next stop was a trip downtown to meet with an attorney named Sandra Chen in a modern building made of glass and steel. Sandra is the kind of woman who gets straight to the point, and she sat there with a focused expression as I told her the whole story about the missing money and my fears that Alicia has been tampering with our family legal papers. We spent hours sitting there together looking over my Medicare documents and every one of my savings accounts. She looked me in the eye and told me the smartest thing I could do was to open a brand new bank account at a different system and move every penny I have left far away from Alicia's reach. I spent most of my afternoon at the Chase Bank branch, talking with a financial consultant to officially cancel every paper that gave Alicia any power over my life or my money. Seeing how much my 401k retirement fund had dropped because of her greed made my heart sink. But at least I know that now I am the only one who can touch what is left. I made sure to sign up for electronic statements instead of having them sent to my mailbox, so she can never again intercept my mail or use my personal information to steal from me. It felt like I was finally taking the steering wheel of my own life back into my hands. When I finally got back to my house, I started what I call a digital cleaning of my entire life. I sat at my computer and changed the passwords on my email and all my social media. And I made sure to block Alicia's phone number and any other strange contacts I did not recognize. It felt like I was slowly and carefully untangling myself from a thick and poisonous web of lies. I gathered up all of John's legal papers and our family will, and locked them safely inside a fireproof safe. I took the time to scan every single page and email those copies to Sandra, so she would have her own record of the truth stored away where no one else could touch it. While I was busy cleaning under the sofa cushions, I happened to find John's old leather wallet tucked way back in the corner where it had been forgotten. Inside, I found several past due utility bills for our water and electricity from months ago, even though John always told me he had given Alicia the cash to pay those bills on time. Finding those papers just confirmed the ugly truth that she had been planning to take advantage of us for a very long time. I carefully tucked those old bills into my folder of evidence for the lawyer, because I know that every little piece of the truth is going to matter in the fight ahead. I also realized that I have to take much better care of my own body if I am going to stay strong enough to be there for John and my grandkids. My blood pressure has been running real high from all this stress, so I made sure to take my medicine and check my numbers every single morning. I went on Amazon and ordered some fresh calcium and fish oil supplements because I need my bones and my heart to be steady for the long road that is waiting for me. I know I have to stay sharp and healthy if I am going to be the pillar that this family needs during this storm. As the sun started to go down and the streetlights began to flicker on, I sat down at my kitchen table and ate a simple but healthy dinner. My phone buzzed with a notification from my new security camera, but it was just a neighbor walking their dog down the sidewalk. For the first time in many weeks, I felt a tiny but real spark of safety in my own home. I know in my heart that I have done the right thing by building these boundaries to protect myself and my family. I had everything ready in terms of the legal paperwork, but my heart still felt a little bit heavy and empty from all the betrayal. Then I heard a soft and very quiet knock at my front door. It was not the loud and angry banging of an enemy, but something much more gentle and kind. It was my dear friend Martha from the church choir and my kind neighbor Sarah standing there on the porch. They were carrying a tray of warm baked goods that smelled like heaven, and they had the kindest, most concerned smiles on their faces. Sarah reached out and squeezed my hand so tight and told me they had heard the shouting coming from my house yesterday, and they had been worrying about me ever since. In our community, this kind of looking out for one another is a blessing that is worth more than anything money can buy. I finally let my guard down and opened up to them, telling them the truth about how Alicia had betrayed our family and the heartbreak of John's condition. I felt a massive weight lift off my tired shoulders, just having someone listen, and I could see the understanding and compassion in their eyes as I spoke. Martha looked me straight in the eye and promised me that the whole church family is going to stand right by my side through this entire storm. She told me they would help with anything I need, from picking up groceries to watching over the house while I am at the hospital sitting with John. But then Martha told me something that really touched my heart. She said she would be a witness for me because she had seen with her own eyes how Alicia had been disrespectful and had insulted me in public many times before. My faith in the goodness of people, which Alicia had tried so hard to break, was starting to feel whole again because of these women. Then Sarah told me she had some news of her own. She said her front door camera had actually caught Alicia sneaking into my house with a private key in the middle of the night. This was a piece of evidence that I knew would be priceless in showing how Alicia had been violating my privacy and my safety. I was so moved that I felt the tears finally start to sting my eyes, and I whispered to them that I had really thought I was all alone in this fight. Having them there made my house feel less like a cold fortress and more like a home again, surrounded by the love of my neighbors. I realized that real strength does not just come from lawyer papers, but from the hands that reach out to hold yours when times get hard. The support from my friends gave me the courage I needed to face the very last of the ugly truth. And it was actually while I was cleaning up the mess Alicia had left behind that I stumbled upon the secret weapon she was always so terrified I would find. My dear friends, in your hardest moments, who was the person who stood by you and held your hand? Sometimes a neighbor or a friend from church is truly an angel sent to help us through. Please leave a comment with the word companion to honor those wonderful friends in your life. That afternoon, I decided to head down into the basement where we keep all the old boxes from when we first moved here to Houston. Among John's old toys and stacks of dusty newspapers, I found a small metal box tucked away deep behind some spare tires. When I pried it open, my hand started shaking uncontrollably. Inside, it wasn't memories at all, but a thick stack of legal papers with fresh stamps on them. It was a new will where my name had been completely crossed out of the inheritance for this house and all our savings. What hurt even more was looking at John's signature at the bottom of the page. It looked so strange and shaky, not at all like the way my son has signed his name since he was a boy. It was a cold, calculated betrayal that made my heart feel like it was sinking into the cold floor. I kept digging and found handwritten notes about debts and gambling websites Alicia had been visiting. In the dim light of that basement, the ugly truth was laid bare right in front of me that Alicia had been planning this for a very long time, even before John ever got sick. There were even printed emails showing she had been talking to a man named Kyle about how to quickly sell off our family assets the moment John was no longer able to fight back. I felt a freezing chill run down my spine, realizing this wasn't just greed. It was a planned robbery of our family legacy during a year when everything in 2025 is already so expensive and uncertain. I sat right down on that cold cement floor and stared at the words written in italics that said, "All financial decision-making power belongs to Alicia." She had used our love and our trust to forge these papers, and the pain of that betrayal was now mixed with a deep sense of disgust. To her, John and I weren't family at all. We were just obstacles standing in the way of the money she wanted. I grabbed my phone and carefully photographed every single page, making sure the images were clear. These photos are going to be my silent but powerful secret weapon, and I sent them to my lawyer Sandra Chen right then and there. When I finally walked back up the stairs, I had to take a long, deep breath to keep myself steady. I saw a weather report on the television warning about severe storms heading for Texas here in late 2025. But I knew in my heart that the biggest storm was already happening right inside my own four walls. I wasn't afraid anymore because finding the truth had given me a kind of clarity that washed away every last bit of doubt I had about my daughter-in-law. I am going to protect every bit of the life we worked for because John and my grandbabies deserve a future that isn't built on lies. That night, I was physically worn out, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I knew I needed a solid place to stand to keep my resolve firm, and the only place I could find that kind of strength was in the memories of the man who helped me build everything we have. I walk over to that small, quiet corner in my living room, where I keep the photo of Robert, my late husband, wearing his old uniform from the Vietnam days. I reach out and touch the glass over his kind smile, feeling a warmth that seems to come from deep within the frame. Robert spent his whole life working hard at the shipyard, breathing in the dust and enduring the long-term effects of Agent Orange just to make sure our son John would have the very best future possible. I whisper to him that I am not going to let anyone destroy the legacy he sacrificed so much to build for us. The memory of his love and the way he always looked out for me feels like a healing medicine for my soul, helping me find a sense of peace right in the middle of this dark storm. I remember all those Sunday mornings we spent together at the Baptist church, praying for our family and lifting our voices in song. Robert always taught me that a person's honor and self-respect are the most valuable things they own, and that no one can ever take them away without your permission. I think about how his own family had to be so resilient just to survive the economic hardships of the Great Depression years ago. And it reminds me that the same spirit of endurance is moving through my own blood right now. I can almost feel him standing there beside me, telling me to keep my head held high and to protect the dignity of our family name. I take out our old family Bible and slowly turn the pages, looking at the small notes Robert wrote in the margins over the years. That spiritual connection gives me a kind of strength that no bank account or credit card could ever provide. I am not just some lonely 68-year-old woman waiting for things to happen to me anymore. I am the protector of Robert's legacy and the spiritual pillar for my son, while he is still unable to stand on his own. The determination I feel inside is like a steady lighthouse beam, showing me exactly which way I need to go to bring the truth into the light. That inner strength has given me what I need, but a new and very sneaky challenge is already starting to move toward me. Alicia is not just after the money anymore. She is trying to take away the one thing I have left, which is my own mind. On a quiet Tuesday morning, a sharp and dry knock echoed through my hallway, and when I checked my security camera, I saw a woman in a formal business suit standing next to a police officer. My heart started thumping against my ribs because I knew in my soul that the storm Alicia promised was finally at my doorstep. When I opened the door, the woman introduced herself as an agent from Adult Protective Services, and she told me they had received a report that I was suffering from severe memory loss and was no longer able to take care of myself or my affairs. It was a cold and calculated move by Alicia to try and gaslight me into a nursing home so she could take control of everything I have worked for. I felt a flash of pure anger, but I forced myself to take a very long and deep breath because I knew I had to be the picture of calm to win this fight. I invited them inside with as much dignity as I could muster, and I made sure they saw how clean and organized my home was, and that they smelled the fresh cinnamon from the rolls I had just pulled out of the oven. I led them to the dining table and told them with a steady and peaceful smile that I had been expecting someone to show up, since someone was clearly very worried about my health lately. The social worker started asking me basic questions to test my mind, like what day it was and who the president is, and I answered every single one of them with perfect accuracy. I told them all about the current economic shifts of 2025 and how the rising cost of living has been affecting everyone in Texas. Then I went and got my medical notebook, where I meticulously record the time I take my blood pressure medication and my daily calcium and fish oil supplements. I could see the surprise on their faces because I was not the confused and frail old woman Alicia had described in her lies. When they finally brought up the accusation that I was supposedly manipulating John's finances, I stood up and pulled out the folder of bank statements and the evidence of those gambling transfers Alicia had made. I told them very clearly that this was the real reason my daughter-in-law wanted me tucked away in a facility, so I wouldn't be around to stop her from draining our accounts. I also handed them the health certificate from my primary care physician that I had the foresight to get just last week, proving that I am in full control of my mental and physical health. The atmosphere in the room changed right then, and the officer actually looked a bit embarrassed for being there. The social worker then mentioned that to close the case, I might need to undergo an independent psychiatric evaluation, and I did not flinch for a second. I told her I would absolutely agree to it, as long as the doctor was a truly independent expert chosen by my own lawyer and not the one Alicia had already tried to set up for me. I knew Alicia had likely tried to find a doctor she could manipulate, but I was one step ahead of her. I looked that social worker right in the eye and told her that I have survived a lot of things in my life, from the dark days of Hurricane Katrina to the worst of the respiratory illness outbreaks we have seen lately. I told her that my mind and my dignity are things I have spent my whole life protecting, and I wasn't about to let a few desperate lies take them away from me now. I felt a massive surge of pride as they stood up to leave, and the social worker thanked me for my cooperation and admitted that my home was one of the most well-maintained she had seen in a while. As the door closed behind them, I sat back down in my chair and felt a wave of relief wash over me like a cool rain. Alicia had played her most disgusting card by attacking my sanity, but she had completely underestimated the strength of a woman who has been tempered by time and faith. I was still here, and I was more focused and alert than I have ever been. A few days later, that failed attempt to label me as senile must have pushed Alicia over the edge because I received a heavy envelope in the mail from the court. The legal battle was officially beginning, and I knew it was time for the final showdown to bring justice to my family. My dear friends, our mental clarity is a gift from God as we get older, and we must never let anyone make us doubt the truth we know in our hearts. Do you make it a point to keep up with your regular checkups with your family doctor? Please leave a comment with the word health to remind us all to stay strong and take good care of ourselves. Sitting in Sandra Chen's office one last time felt different because the air was thick with the weight of the truth we had finally gathered. We looked over the forged will one more time, and the digital footprint of those strange crypto wallets that Alicia thought were invisible. Even the signed testimony from Martha about the way Alicia had been mistreating me was laid out on the mahogany desk like a shield. Alicia had sent over a settlement offer through her own lawyer, trying to tell me she would drop her lawsuit if I just gave her half of everything we owned and let her keep managing our grandson Jake's college fund. I looked at that piece of paper, and I did not see a compromise. I only saw another trap set by a person who would gamble away the roof over our heads without a second thought. I looked at Sandra and told her with a voice that did not tremble one bit that I refused to settle for anything less than the whole truth. Sandra just smiled at me like she had been waiting for me to find that iron in my soul. We both knew we were holding on to the secret weapon that would change everything. Those printed emails where Alicia talked to that man, Kyle, about leaving John behind the second she got her hands on our money. Knowing the depth of her cruelty actually gave me a strange kind of peace, because there was no more guessing and no more doubt. I felt a deep stillness settling over me like the quiet moment right before a Texas thunderstorm when the birds stop singing and the world just holds its breath. I spent my last evening before the trial in quiet prayer and writing down the words I wanted to say to the judge. I did not want to fill the courtroom with anger or bitterness because that is not who I am. I wanted to talk about Robert's long years of service at the shipyard and the way he loved his family, and I wanted to speak up for my son John and the future of my grandchildren. I wanted that courtroom to be a place where the honor of our family name was finally restored. That night, I slept more deeply than I have in months because my conscience was clear and I knew I was doing exactly what Robert would have wanted me to do. When the sun came up the next morning, I chose my best Sunday suit and I put on that heirloom necklace that Sarah had been keeping safe for me. Looking at myself in the mirror, I did not see the scared and tired woman who had sat in that hospital hallway weeks ago. I saw a woman of dignity and strength who was ready to stand up for the truth. When I walked through the heavy doors of the courthouse, I saw Alicia standing there looking all tense and defensive, but I did not even give her a second look. I kept my eyes forward and my heart focused on the justice I was about to ask for. The heavy sound of the judge's gavel finally filled the room, and I knew it was time for the world to hear what had really been happening in the shadows of our home. All the eyes in the room were on me, and I knew I was finally ready to speak my truth. The air inside the courtroom was heavy and still, as if the walls themselves knew the weight of the secrets about to be told. I sat there in the front row, and my heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs as I watched Alicia take the stand. She looked so small and fragile in her black dress, wiping away fake tears as she began her testimony. She spoke with a trembling voice, telling the judge that she was just a devoted wife who had been pushed to the breaking point by an authoritarian mother-in-law who wanted to control every penny of John's money. She had the nerve to look that judge in the eye and claimed that I had hidden financial documents from her and that I was the one standing in the way of John's care. I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, and I did not let a single emotion show on my face, even though her lies felt like cold water being thrown on my soul. I knew that the truth does not need to scream to be heard, and I was waiting for my turn to let it speak. When it was finally Sandra Chen's turn, she stood up with a quiet confidence that filled the entire room. She did not start with a long speech, but instead she started laying out the cold, hard facts. She showed the court the bank records that proved thousands upon thousands of dollars had been drained from John's accounts and sent directly to those gambling websites in the Caymans, while John was lying unconscious in that hospital bed. I watched as the color drained from Alicia's face, and she started fidgeting with her collar, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. Sandra then moved on to the forged will, and she pointed out how the signature did not match any of John's previous legal documents, and even Alicia's own lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. The turning point of the entire afternoon came when Sandra revealed what we called our secret weapon. She projected those printed emails onto the large screen for everyone to see, and the room went completely silent as people read Alicia's own words to that man, Kyle. She had written in plain English that she had no intention of ever taking care of John, and that her only goal was to liquidate our family assets as fast as she possibly could before anyone caught on. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom, and then a low murmur started to spread through the gallery like a coming tide. Alicia just bowed her head, and her long hair fell over her face as she realized there was no longer any way for her to hide from the light of justice. Then the judge looked over at me and asked if I would like to speak. I stood up and walked to that witness stand, and for the first time in weeks, my voice felt as strong and clear as a bell. I did not talk about the money or the greed. Instead, I talked about Robert and the decades he spent working at the shipyard to give us a life we could be proud of. I told the judge how Alicia had not just tried to steal our savings, but she had tried to steal my very dignity and make the world believe I was losing my mind just so she could feed her addiction. I looked that judge right in the eyes, and I told him that I was not there for revenge, but I was there to protect the legacy of my husband and the future of my grandchildren, because they are the only reason I keep fighting. When I finished and sat back down, I felt a deep sense of calm, because I knew I had said exactly what needed to be said. The judge spent what felt like a lifetime reviewing the documents before he finally returned to the bench and picked up his gavel. He spoke with a voice that was firm and full of authority, and he announced that the court was completely rejecting every single one of Alicia's claims. He stated that the evidence of financial abuse and document forgery was undeniable, and he gave Alicia a stinging rebuke for her immoral behavior toward a family member who was in a life-threatening condition. When I heard those words, I felt a massive wave of relief wash over me, and I finally let the hot tears fall down my cheeks. The weight that had been crushing my chest for so long was finally gone, and I knew that justice had finally found its way home. Alicia was escorted out of the room, and the look of shame on her face was something I will never forget. Every bit of her power over our family and her right to John's inheritance was officially revoked by the court. Sandra and I had already made sure that Jake's college fund was moved into a protected trust that only I and a legal guardian can monitor, so that he will always have the future his grandfather wanted for him. I walked out of that courthouse and into the bright Texas sun, and I felt the warmth on my face like a blessing from above. I looked up at the blue sky and I whispered to Robert that we had done it, and that our family name was finally clean again. I turned and gave Sandra Chen a hug that said more than any words ever could, and I saw Martha and Sarah waiting for me at the bottom of the steps with big smiles on their faces. We all went to our favorite family restaurant that evening, and the sound of our laughter filling the room was the sweetest music I have ever heard. We shared a meal and talked about our faith and the way the community had come together to protect one of its own. Sitting there with my true friends, I realized that the nightmare was finally over and that a brand new chapter of my life was starting right then and there. It has been 6 months since that final day in court, and I finally decided to sell the old house in Houston because it held too many heavy shadows of betrayal. I moved into a bright and cozy apartment in a community for active seniors where the morning sun fills my living room, and I can finally breathe easy. The greatest blessing of all is that my son John has finally woken up, and even though his recovery is a slow road, he is making a miracle of a comeback every single day. I spend my time now tending to my small garden, reading new stories on my Kindle, and attending knitting classes at the local community center where I have made so many wonderful new friends. I have learned through this fire that no matter what our age is, we still have a sacred right to be respected and to protect the lives we have worked so hard to build. Sacrificing for our children is a beautiful part of who we are. But I know now that it should never be traded for our own safety or our dignity. My dear friends, my journey is living proof of the strength you can find when you stand in the truth and hold on to your faith. Do not ever let another person try to define your value by the number of years you have lived or by a temporary moment of weakness. You must stay alert and love yourself enough to set firm boundaries, because there are always kind and good souls in this world who will stand as your allies when the wind blows hard. The most precious legacy I am leaving behind for my grandchildren isn't just the bank accounts or the property, but the lesson of how to be resilient, and how to walk with integrity through any storm. This life is still so full of beauty, and every new morning is a fresh opportunity to live a life that is whole and happy. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to my story and for walking this long road home with me. Thank you for sharing this time with me. It means so much to have you here. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with a sister who needs to hear it. We are never alone when we stand together. Stay strong, keep your light shining, and stay blessed until next time.